Hello, I'm Bruce Lorincz, and this series is called Bruce on the Loose, which allows me to talk to all sorts of very interesting people around the Wadsworth area. Today we're pleased to have Lucy Harvey with us, Executive Director of FISH, and also Len Maher, President of FISH. And thank you both for joining us today and talking about this very important organization. And Len, why don't we begin with you? What does FISH stand for, and what about the history in our town?
Yeah, FISH originated or was formed in late of 1969. It was four women read an article in Reader's Digest, printed in January 1969, and then there was a movie that was shown in Akron. They went over to see the movie. FISH is based on neighbors helping neighbors. The article was about a young boy that mother was very ill, and neighbors came and helped them, and that's what FISH is all about. Early on, Marion Mockel and Lois Davis both worked for Franklin Schools, and they saw a need in the schools in Franklin where students were coming. They needed clothing articles. The parents were moving from place to place, and they saw the need and saw the film and got people together and organized what is now Wadsworth FISH.
I think we have a visual on that, John. If you could show us that for a second. I think it was an article in Reader's Digest we talked earlier, which really initiated this organization.
Right, correct.
So it was really interesting from that beginning. It just has probably grown over the years of interest and need.
Yeah, the original, all calls had to come through the Wadsworth Police Department. They worked closely with the Wadsworth Police, and at that time, people that needed help had to call the phone number 336-4300, which it's still the same phone number, and they would contact FISH volunteers. And at that time, Marion Mockel had organized over 100 people that would receive these emergency phone calls and then address the need. And she later got the name of FISH Ed. So everybody seems to know Marion Mockel when you mention FISH.
That's an interesting story, especially with contacting the police first. That's the original. They're the helping group, and they would then be kind of the conduit, the middleman to get help. Lucy, what are some of the objectives as you see it of FISH?
Currently, our objectives are to meet immediate needs of families, individuals and families in Wadsworth and Wadsworth Township. And we look at those immediate needs to kind of focus on shelter, food, and remaining warm or having utilities. And those are the main areas that we're able to provide emergency financial assistance.
Len, are all the people affiliated with FISH volunteers?
Yes, that's been like that since the beginning. We have 15 board members represented by 12 local churches, and we have Lucy as the executive director. So we have 16 people. In addition to our board, we have what we call Friends of FISH, and these are individuals that are volunteers that help with intake on Monday and Tuesday nights from 6 to 8, and we need greeters and intake workers.
Well, that's very interesting. You mentioned churches. I was at a church service Sunday, and Trinity Church went ahead and dedicated 12 baskets for your use, and our affectionate group we call the Nitwits went ahead and did some crocheting and macrameing and sewing, and got gloves, and I think John has pictures of hats and scarves, and that certainly will help some of our children in need in the winter months, and probably gives them a real good feeling, I would imagine.
Yeah, what we do with that, we have our Adopt a Family Christmas, which is going on now. And we provide families that have come and applied, we interview them, and then we have a number of local people and companies and churches that adopt the families. And every family that we adopt gets scarves, gloves, hats. So, and then we bring what is left back to the office and distribute that throughout the winter months.
Well, that's really interesting to hear. Lucy, what are some of the duties of the executive director of Fish? I'm sure you've added some over the years.
Actually, they have increased over time. I look at the job as really just the day-to-day running of the organization. We have, as Len mentioned, a message line. We have the original number. Even though now we're asking folks to come in to have an interview to talk about their need, people can call potential clients, potential donors, potential volunteers, call the message line or email. We have an email address, and I respond to those. I help oversee the finances of the group, keep track of the donations that come in, and make the bank deposits. Intake is really the meat of what we do, and I help to coordinate that. We have someone that works on the scheduling, but I'm usually there at least one of the 2 evenings a week, and help see clients, make sure everything's running smoothly.
I would imagine people are reluctant to go ahead and come forward and say they need help. Is that true?
That is true. There are times, yes, that we really need to help them overcome that. Our interviews are held in private. We ask people to bring some basic information. We pay vendors directly. So in other words, if someone comes in and they're struggling to make their rent payment, we'll work with the landlord and this check will be sent to the landlord. But when they come in, we just ask that they sit down and tell us a little bit about what their need is. We don't get into a lot of the details. We're not checking income. That's not what we do. All of our volunteers are there 2 evenings a week. When we do this 2 evenings a week, we don't have the opportunity to do a lot of checking. I mean, as I said, that's just not what we're about. We sit and we just try to help people with an immediate need and maybe give them some ideas if they need more than we can help with.
It's not a very intimidating situation, and I would say that if someone would, again, maybe talk to someone else that has been through that, they would really, that would allow them to come forward a little quicker maybe.
I hope so. I mean, we attempt to, as I said, make it as non-threatening as possible, and assuring people that everyone has times when there are needs, and that we could get over this hump, so to speak.
Len, what about some of the duties of the president of Fish? What are you up to in that organization?
Well, oversee preside over the board, assist Lucy, and with intake. Well, really, whatever needs to be done. I try to encourage people to become involved, go out into the community, and we're going to start this next coming year to try to go out and visit some of the organizations that meet locally, and possibly some of the churches that we don't have board members from, and encourage them to become friends of Fish. One thing that I want to kind of build on what Lucy said, we are a confidential organization, so if you come to Wadsworth Fish, the only people that'll know about your need are the people at Wadsworth Fish. So that's one thing I think we need to stress, that it's done in confidentiality, so you can feel confident that it won't be discussed outside of the organization.
Lucy, what about some of the projects during the year that Fish takes on to maybe raise money, or raise awareness of the group?
We participate in as many local events as we're able. I mean, we're part of downtown Wadsworth. We belong to the chamber. We attend those meetings. We attend those events. We attempt to go to different service groups and speak if we're asked, or sometimes we'll approach them. We have a publicity person that's on our board who sends regular articles or suggestions for articles to the Post. We depend upon the donations of churches, individuals, groups, companies for our emergency money. So all of that money that's donated goes to the emergency need. Money that we need to operate, we fundraise. And we'll sometimes have an event like one of the restaurant dining kind of events where if folks go to a particular restaurant, Fish would get part of the proceeds. We've written grants for operating money, and we really try to keep our operating expenses as low as possible, which, you know, obviously by having an all-volunteer group, you know, we're not paying salaries. I do need to mention, we are hosted in terms of having a location for intake by Quality Heating and Cooling. And that's a relatively new company to the Wadsworth area. And when they first came about 3 years ago, we were in the basement of St. Mark's Episcopal Church having intake, which was not a permanent site. We needed to tear down our equipment and everything after our Tuesday night intake because then Sunday church was going to be held. Quality came in wanting to support a local group, and we were connected with them and moved in with them in their first building. And now they're in their newest location, which is on the corner of Party and College. And we moved with them when they moved. And so we're there the 2 evenings of the week, and they're pretty much supporting our being in that building.
Well, that's really good to know.
It's very good, yes.
And again, we talk about individuals, but certainly businesses, church and business and corporations can really help a
Yes.
great deal to your group as well.
And they do. Wadsworth is a very, very generous community.
Len, what you touched on Adopt a Family. You know, could you expand a little more on that? And is there anything else in the holiday seasons, with Thanksgiving right around the corner and then Christmas to follow, that we really want to help these families out?
Well, what our niche, as we call it, is adopt a family. We don't provide meals at Thanksgiving. We have organizations that we work hand in hand with. We've got the Salvation Army, St. Vincent de Paul's. So basically, for the holiday season, Adopt a Family is the program that Fish is involved with. But so it's worked out well, and that's kind of, like I said earlier, our niche.
Lucy, with minimum wage in Ohio, I think it's gone up to $8.50 possibly, or $8.25. How can a family with both parents working really make it? It's really difficult with real estate prices rising and groceries skyrocketing. It's real difficult, even when two husband and wife working, to make ends meet, isn't it?
It seems, yes, I would say that it does, and honestly, we do see many individuals who are working. We ask that folks tell us a little bit about their situation. Obviously, we'll ask where they're employed, give us a rough idea of their monthly wage, and then what their expenses are. And sometimes we have helped folks look at some budgeting, or perhaps go where else could they go if they need assistance. But individuals are eligible to come to Fish every 90 days if they need the help. And the amount that we can assist them with will go down a little when they come, if they have to come more than one time. And there are many times with some of our working families that we are saying to them, let's get you caught up, so when you're eligible to come back, even if you think you can make this bill, why don't you come and let us help you, and then that'll give you a little bit of extra.
Len, you talked about coordination with some of the groups within the city. What about Medina County? I'm sure Fish reaches out to the agencies in Medina County. A lot of times the paperwork and the rigmarole to kind of get in these programs are sometimes difficult. We
have pamphlets, and we have sheets that list all the organizations in Medina County that people can seek help. We can give them the phone numbers, the addresses, and encourage them to go and fill out this paperwork. Even though it can become very cumbersome, it's something that's very important for them to get in contact with organizations and groups that can help them.
So still, even with this, some people still fall through the cracks. How does that sometimes frustrate you and your group that you'd probably like to help more people, but somehow they just don't come forward, or there's difficulty there?
Well, I guess they have to come forward. That's the first thing that they have to do.
Right.
We have to know that there's a need, and when we know there's a need, then we can help with that need. But if they don't come forward, there's no way for us to know, or any organization, whether it be Salvation Army, St. Vincent de Paul, to help.
Lucy, there seems to be a housing concern in Wadsworth, particularly with houses affordable for people maybe moving into the community. Those people, that maybe have found a job in town. Could you speak to that about what the group tries to do with adequate housing?
Typically, we support individuals once they're here. I mean, that is one of our requirements, that they be a resident of Wadsworth or Wadsworth Township. We ask that they have photo ID and then proof of residency, which would be a lease or a utility bill in their name. Many of the people that come to us have already found housing, and they're throughout the community. I mean, there's obviously varying prices, and there's, we get individuals that are part of the Metropolitan Housing Authority through Medina County, and we work with them too. We really are not able, or folks don't tend to come to us when they're in need of a house. They'll come to us though because now they found something and they've paid first month rent and a deposit, and things are looking a little tight, and that's what we would do. In fact, we'll even have landlords that will refer, knowing that, there's this new tenant now and they've just spent X number of dollars and things again are tight, so they're going to refer to Fish, and maybe we can help them get some food. We work with Hometown Market directly and send folks there to get perishable foods, things that you can't find in a pantry. So we're helping, I think, in terms of housing by maybe meeting need with another bill, or possibly the utility bill. But we tend to have more referrals coming to us that when folks already have found something in Wadsworth.
It sounds like you really extend out to the businesses and corporations, and there's a collaboration there that really is kind of unbelievable how that works, and probably has expanded over the years.
Oh, it most definitely has expanded over the years, and I'd like to believe that we do have a good collaboration. As I said before, people are very generous in Wadsworth, and when they hear there is a group that is doing this, people approach us with ideas or with their donations, that kind of thing, or want information so that they can help refer.
Mm-hmm. What about Len, about the opioid crisis? I'm sure that has touched, certainly Ohio ranks in the top 4 or 5 in the country in regards to these concerns. How has it impacted Wadsworth, and in particular Fish?
I'm not really that familiar with Wadsworth. I read the local paper, and you know it's there, you know it's bad. But as far as Fish goes, we really, Lucy was saying the other day that she had talked with someone that their family was involved. But and I believe we assisted the family that came. But as far as being involved in any of the programs, we're not.
Okay. Lucy, any comments about, do you see that as a concern, especially with maybe the children in a family?
I see, from the time I started with Fish back in 2013, I think we are seeing more grandparents who are raising grandchildren or great-grandchildren. Possibly it is because of that. Folks will come in for an interview, and our issue with them is, what is your need? Let's look at what's going on with the bill or whatever, and how can we help you? Tell us, what your budget looks like, that kind of thing. We're not always hearing all of the details, but sometimes they do want to talk about that. And I did have a woman came in who was actually helping to raise a great-grandchild, because the grandmother had drug problems and the mother of the baby was very small. or very young rather, and so we were able to help them with the bill and help them with Christmas. I know in surrounding counties, they've expanded services to reach out to seniors, because that seems to be a big need, who are helping to raise family members because of parents having problems with drugs.
Len, what about some of the challenges that you can see fish, not only the opioid concern that we've touched on briefly, but what are some concerns that may be down the road that you have to coordinate and deal with?
Well, right now we're discussing the homelessness situation in Wadsworth, and that's becoming we've had people come forward that are homeless, and we're working trying to come up with help with between St. Vincent de Paul and Salvation Army and Wadsworth Police. But we've just basically started discussing on the board if and what there is that Wadsworth Fish can do to help.
That has implications for the schools too, because certainly we need those children in school so they don't get behind, and it kind of involves all sorts of agencies and systems to try to kind of work together, as you've mentioned, and it's not an easy task, is it?
No, it's not. And Medina County has some organizations that help with the homeless, and we try to get them to contact these organizations. But yeah, it's heart-wrenching when somebody comes and says that they're sleeping in their car or they're sleeping in a tent, and they have little ones.
And Lucy, this could have been a family that were gainfully employed and somehow the business moved, or they've cut their hours and they can't make ends meet. It could have been people that were successful and even had a home before, and now they don't.
Yes, most definitely. I mean, sometimes those are the stories that we hear. Someone who literally was one paycheck away, and maybe an illness occurred, and now they can't make their rent, and that kind of thing. And so we try as much as we can to refer. By being open 2 evenings a week, and we're an all-volunteer group, it's hard for us to do some of the case management that's needed, because a lot of that needs to occur during the day when agencies are open. But we can help make the connection so people can follow through, and as much as possible maybe make some phone calls if we can for them. But I think we look at it as just steering them, if we can, in the right direction.
No question about it. Can you think of some other challenges? I know Len had an opportunity to field that question. Anything that you can see down the road? Do you have a crystal ball, by the way? I don't know if you do.
I kind of wish
Okay.
I did, but no,
Okay.
I don't. Right now, the biggest challenge I think Fish is facing is our manpower. We want to remain an all-volunteer group. We're a grassroots group. That's been the history of Fish in Wadsworth. We need people that would be willing to come, and it's not for some folks, it's not easy to sit down and have to listen to somebody who's coming in because they can't pay a bill, or there's not enough food in the house, or like Len was talking about, maybe close to being homeless, or that kind of thing. But our volunteers get training, the ones that will do intake, and that's where our need is right now, and our biggest challenge, because we would like for folks to be willing to give us 2 hours a month. Our intake sessions are from 6 to 8 on Monday and Tuesday evenings, so that's 4 hours a week. We generally operate with a coordinator, and that's someone that has some experience with the organization, and then 2 interviewers and an individual that greets. So we need 4 people each night that we're open, and it can be stressful. And we know that, so we try to make it as easy as possible and say, you can work as many hours as you like, but if you could give us 2 hours a month, we would be very, very grateful, because we would like to continue doing what we're doing as an all-volunteer group.
I would imagine many of the volunteers are retirees, but
Yes.
you don't have to be.
No.
You could be someone that maybe, again, has some background and training and can easily talk to people and get to the questions answered that they need to. And again, it's not a commitment for people can try this, and if they like it, they can continue.
Correct.
Right?
Correct, and if they don't, we understand there are other things that our volunteers help us with. When we do have to do a fundraiser, we'll use volunteers. We reach out to business folks in town for ideas, in terms of budgeting, that kind of thing. So we can use any kind of manpower out there, and we would certainly work with anybody who would like to be a part of FISH to find out what their talents are and how we could best use that.
So Len, if the article in 1969 started Wadsworth Fish, I don't know exactly when you started, but that's 50 years ago. Is there a big celebration coming up? Did Wadsworth really start in the early 70s probably then?
No, it started in 1969.
Okay, all right.
August, September 1969.
Okay.
And Marion Mockel, one of the originators of Wadsworth Fish, was a Grand Marshal of the Blue Tip Parade this year.
Okay.
We celebrated at the first Friday. We had balloons and different things. So yeah, it's just been a year-long celebration as we start our 51st year in 6-7 weeks.
Well, that sounds good, and I appreciate you coming and being a part of the show, and I hope you would consider volunteering for FISH. They certainly would need the help, and it does help many families in Wadsworth. Thanks for viewing Bruce on the Loose.